The 1983 Little 500 had again one of those exciting finishes. The Acacia bike team taking the lead between the third and fourth curves, coming around with Jeff Hilligoss driving down the straightaway to take the checkered flag. The Acacia team this year will start in 21st position. Coach Tom Schwegler will tell us about his strategy for this year's race.
Our strategy this year is probably going to be very similar to what our strategy was last year. We're going to use the same methodical approach, and if anything develops, we're going to make sure we're with it. If people decide to go off the front, if they decide to just lay back and wait for the last sprint, you can bank on the fact that Acacia will be there.
Phi Psi Fraternity is one of those teams which has a great reputation here in the Little 500 as a team that has won this race before, a team that again is starting way back in the pack this time. No team has ever started that far back and won, but here's what the Phi Psis think about their chances today.
Starting in 30th position this year, I don't think has any effect on the way, our performance is going to be. We had a tough time at qualifications, but the qualification is no indication of the race.
In 1978, a movie was made called Breaking Away, in which one of the teams was called the Cutters. Again, this year we have the Cutters, and they're one of the teams that possibly could be a winner in this race. Here's how they feel, how their chances are.
I think we're one of the favorites, but also Acacias have got the previous win under their belts, so I think a lot of teams are going to be keying off Acacia more than us today. Our strategy, I think, is just ride a strong race toward the front and try to stay out of the crashes and put our sprinter on at the end, and hopefully everything will come out. I think we, got a good chance of pulling off first or second today.
From the Bill Armstrong Stadium on the campus of Indiana University, the Indiana University Foundation and Broadcast Communications Incorporated present the 1984 Little 500. The 1984 Little 500 is brought to you by Indiana National, pioneers in banking. Budweiser, proud sponsor of the U.S. Olympic team. For all you do, this Bud's for you. And now here's your host, Max Skirvin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a rain-drenched Bill Armstrong Stadium. Rain has been the big news here for the Little 500 the past 2 days, as it has been a downpour that has postponed the race for one day, and here it is now an opportunity to run it on a Sunday afternoon 24 hours later. And the weather appears to be cooperating that finally the race will be run, although it is extremely wet. Alongside me is Chris Gutowski, a four-time rider here, a Hall of Famer as far as Little 500s are concerned, riding on the winning teams in 81 and 82 with the Delta Chi. Chris, what will the weather delay cause these riders?
Well, first of all, I think just another night sitting around waiting for the race is kind of bad. All the excitement with a Little 500 weekend is really hard on the riders. But the main factor, I think, is the effect of the weather on the track itself. The surface is not going to be good. The track conditions will get worse and worse as the race goes on. I think that's the advantage of the stronger teams. They'll be able to go through the muck and crud better than the teams that expect to sit in and wait for that sprint.
It's very, very windy here. What effect will that have?
That'll have the effect throughout the race, slowing the race down and making it harder and, again, better for the stronger teams. And I think strategically, as we get into the crucial 5 or 10 laps at the end of the race, when teams are trying to set up for the sprint properly, that the heavy wind on the backstretch will change things considerably.
There is one other factor in this race, strategy-wise, in that while the sun is shining right now, the clouds are there. After this thing has been run for 100 laps, it's a complete race when the rains might come. So a team has to keep that in mind. What kind of strategy is involved here?
Well, if you're past 100 laps and it starts raining, the hammer's going to go down. Everyone in the field will start going as fast as they can, because at any moment the race could end, and whoever's in front when that yellow flag comes out would be the winner if they never restarted. So could be interesting if it rains.
We're looking forward to it, and this race will be getting underway very shortly. We're about ready for the pace lap here at the starts of the 34th annual Little 500. In the pace car, Jerry Tardy, Vice President of the Foundation, and John Ryan, President of Indiana University. The riders about to be given their instructions to mount their Roadmasters, and there it comes, and the starting field starts to move away from the starting line. And number 1 will be Sigma Chi, who again for the second year in a row was the pole team at this year's qualifications. Second place in the middle of the first row, Beta Theta Pi, and on the outside, Phi Delta Theta. In the second row, on the inside, Wright Rollins. In the middle of the second row, Lambda Chi Alpha, and on the outside of the number 2 row, the SAE Sigma Alpha Epsilon. Starting in row number 3, on the inside, Alpha Epsilon Pi. In the middle of the third row, Phi Gamma Delta, and on the outside, Sigma Nu. Starting the fourth row, on the inside, the Cutters. In the middle of the fourth row, the Spokesman, and on the outside, Delta Tau Delta. Starting in row number 5, on the inside, Wright Jenkins. In the middle of the inside of the fifth row will be Reed Curry, and on the outside, Kappa Sigma. In the next row will be Avir on the inside. Next will come the ATOs, the Alpha Tau Omega, and on the outside, Sigma Phi Epsilon. Starting in the next row, Delta Upsilon on the inside, Sigma Pi in the middle, and the defending champions, the Acacia, on the outside. In row number 8, on the inside, Cosmic Debris, and in the middle of the 8th row, the Chi Phi, and on the outside, Evans Scholars. Starting in row number 9, Whistler on the inside, and in the middle, Alpha Sigma Phi. On the outside, Pi Kappa Alpha. In row number 10, on the inside, is Team Collins. On the middle of the 10th row, Reed Curry 2, and on the outside, a strong team, Phi Kappa Psi. Starting in row 11, on the inside will be Wright Dodds. In the middle of the 33rd row will be Kappa Delta Rho, and on the outside, the number 33 team, Wright Nichols, as once again the pace car moves away for the second lap here, the pace lap of this start of the 34th annual Little 500. A race that's been delayed by the weather, but the sun is out. It's a bright day now, but it's extremely windy. And Chris Katowski, this wind has got to play a major factor in this race today.
Yeah, I think it's going to make it a lot harder for all the teams. The wind is right in their faces on the home straight here, and will play an important part the whole race, as well in the final closing laps in the sprint. Makes it a lot easier for riders to come around coming out of the last turn, out of the draft.
Here comes the pace car down into turn 3, moving around into turn 4 now as you see the riders flying by. Now it's coming toward the start-finish line. It's picking up the speed. Watch for the flag. It's out. The green is out, and away they go.
It's interesting here to watch the teams that are on the inside rows try and move out and get up to the front where it's safer to ride.
Well, the Sigma Chi is the pole team staying up there with the Betas right alongside. Moving down the backside now. Looks as if Wright Rollins was moving up there a bit from this second row, and somebody on the outside has really moved up. Check them when they come around.
That's the Cutter team there, moving into the number 2 or number 3 spot. They're one of the strong favorites for today's race.
Now they're coming up right in front of us. And it is team number 10, I believe. Is that the Cutters team? I think not. We'll check it as they come back around to get a tighter shot again. Down the backstretch now.
Already some of the weaker teams seem to be having problems holding on to the field. It's stringing out.
The Sigma Nu team is the team that has taken the early lead here. Team number 9 leading the pack, but they're very much bunched up as they come across the 10-second line, or across the 10-second, the start-finish line. Wright Jenkins is right up there with it. They have moved up now from the 5th position. As you can see, everyone is in the pack right now. Chris, with the strong wind, does the pack riding become a little bit more dangerous?
Yeah, it does, especially down at track level where it blows around and it shifts from direction from one way to another. And the riders on the outside of the field get a stronger wind than the ones that are in the draft, and they move over more, and it all gets tight, really close to the curb there. And every now and then a rider might rub a wheel, and then you see a big wreck.
We've got another leader as we come by, and it is Wright Jenkins that has taken the lead. The Cutters running right behind him very comfortably in second. Sigma News appear to be riding right in the third spot as those three teams staying right there. Well, now after about 10 laps here at the Little 500, Chris, we've had a major development here in which the defending champion, the Acacias, have dropped way back.
Yes, they seem to have dropped an exchange in the early laps, and both their number 1 and number 2 riders had to do quite a bit of work to catch the field. And I think this will really hurt them later in the race when their number 1 man who won the sprint last year, Jeff Hillegas, should be looking pretty tired.
Well, they have now moved back up. They were nearly a half a lap back, but they have now moved up just at the tail of the pack. They're probably trailing the front rider now by maybe 50 or 75 yards as you see them headed down the backside, and the Cutters continue to be a strong team. We've had just one slight mishap so far, as you will see here on the number 1 turn just a couple of laps ago. Right in the middle of the pack, cosmic debris went down as one of the teams, and the Pi Kappa Alpha also down. It brought out the yellow flag, but not for very long. It slowed the track just slightly, and it probably gave the Acacias an opportunity to pick up a little bit of ground.
Yeah, I think that was really lucky for them, because not only did it slow things down for a bit under the yellow light, but a number of teams were back behind the field and could help them chase and catch.
Pack now coming around the number 3 turn. You can really tell the difference when they go down the backside as compared to this side. As they come up in front of us now, the leader at this point is team number 13, Wright Jenkins, running a very strong race. We had an opportunity earlier to talk to Bob Zennon, Executive Vice President of Roadmaster. Bob, your impressions so far?
Well, it's a great event. It has to be, as people call it, the greatest college weekend ever, and we're privileged to be part of it.
Well, you're a very active participant in this, and that you supply 80 bicycles. Are these bicycles the standard bikes that you can buy somewhere?
Yes, they are, Max. We supply the bikes for the race and then all the backup equipment and the parts, and they come right off of our production line. There's nothing special about them except their continuing quality, but they're production bicycles.
Is Roadmaster involved in other bike racing?
We are, and we encourage it, and we encourage it for a lot of the obvious values. The physical discipline, sense of competition, and in an event like this at a great world institution, why we feel there are absolutely no losers. Everybody on a team is subject to the discipline, and whether they come in first or last, they're all winners.
Well, Indiana University and the Indiana University Foundation certainly appreciate the cooperation of Roadmaster. You've been of great help to us over the 34 years, and this is going to be another great race today.
Max, we're looking forward to it, and it's a privilege to be part of it, and we look forward to it for many years.
Thank you very much. We're now moving up toward the 40th lap of the Little 500 with the speed now after 30 laps at about 24.09 miles per hour, which Chris Katowski is pretty quick out here considering the conditions, but the track seems to be drying very well. Now on lap 27 as they go by the finish line, and there you see a wreck that has involved the Sigma Chi, Reed Curry, and Kappa Sig. All 3 teams among the leaders. You can see that nothing was extremely serious as the riders jump up quickly, grab their bikes and go, but nevertheless they have dropped out of the top spots. And now back to the action once again as the leaders come around the number 3 turn, heading for the number 4, and will head into the wind once again. Coming up, we'll pick up the leader as they cross the start-finish line, and it is number 10, the Cutters. Number 2 in there, the Betas, riding right alongside, and number 13, Wright Jenkins. So Chris Katowski, we're seeing those strong teams holding pretty much the lead positions all the way through here this afternoon.
Yeah, I think they feel with the 2 or 3 accidents we've had so far coming into the wind and with the crosswind in turn 1 and 2, that staying at the front and keeping things rolling is the best thing for them to do.
All right, the action now is on the 60th lap of the Little 500. As the 61st lap is just now being completed, as you see the pack come by, and in the lead at the moment, Alpha Epsilon Pi, and it would appear they're trying to pull ahead just enough to make an exchange on the far side as the pack swings by. The race has been fairly free of accidents, although we've had a couple, and here is one that occurred back on the 44th lap involving the SAE team, number 6, number 31, Wright Dodds, and number 4, Wright Rollins. As there you can see, is this occurring on the back straightaway back on lap 44. That was the third accident of this race so far. Coming around now, completing lap number 61 as they come by once again. The Betas this time just in front, along with the Cutters. Also there, Phi Gamma Delta, all strong teams in this race. And Chris, although the sun has been out now for the better part of an hour and a half or so, as we look back to the west, the clouds now are beginning to build up. And there you see a scene of that. Of course, if this lap goes 100, it's an official race, but that puts a lot of pressure on the bikes to make sure they're at the lead point at that 100-lap mark.
Yeah, it's up to the foundation officials down on the field to decide when it's rained enough or when it's a possibility of being very hazardous out there after the rain starts. And at any point there, after lap 100, they could wave the yellow flag and the race could be over.
Well, there you can see a shot of the several flags surrounding this place, and you can see how they're really bowing over. The wind must be blowing in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 miles an hour. Certainly one of the most windy days we've had for one of these events. Nevertheless, as we indicated, it has been accident-free. All of the wrecks have occurred, well, 2 of the 3 wrecks have occurred up in the west end, which apparently the wind is having some effect on. Otherwise, it's been a safe race so far with nothing serious. As once again, Pack comes out of the number 4 turn and heading for the start-finish line once again. Of course, the weather has been a problem all weekend long, as we spoke with Jerry Tardy earlier. Jerry, this has been a tough weekend with the rains. What happens when something like that comes along?
Well, it has been a difficult time, but with the group of students we have working on the Student Foundation, they're a lot more flexible than I am. So I just kind of let them do their thing, and they are extremely well organized. And we were out here early this morning, and they had the second day ready to go by 10 o'clock this morning.
We had a rain come about a couple of hours ago, though, that put further dampness on the track. What do you do? Do you get the roller out to try to take care of that?
Well, they grade it down and then they roll it. The rain is really not too much of a problem as long as we don't get a steady rain. The type of showers that are in the area seem to be thunderstorms, and we may have an occasional sprinkle. But good news and bad news, the wind is up, and that's tough on the riders, but it does keep the track in good shape.
Here now are the top 5 leaders after 60 laps. The Cutters were in number 1 at the end of 60. The Betas were in the number 2 position. The Phi Gams 3rd. The Phi Delts were 4th, and Kappa Sigma was in the 5th position. That the official 5 after 60 laps. And now we're going to take a look as we have an exchange occurring here but among the leaders. And here you can see it. It's a good one. Would you like to talk just a little bit about those exchanges, Chris?
Well, that team there was one of the strongest teams, the Wright-Jenkins team. They didn't really succeed in doing what is seen as the best exchange. You need to get a good gap off the front so your fresh rider coming on can get right into the front of the field without making that initial effort before he has a chance to warm up.
Right now it's the Cutters and Sigma Nu, the 2 teams just out in front. But it's a pack of about 15 bikes at the moment, anyone in contention in there, as there is beginning to get some space now between some of them. Some of the teams have dropped back now better than 10 laps to the leaders at the moment, but we still have a good 15 to 20 teams in contention for this race. We're now in lap number 92 as the Cutter team continues to be the leader, but as we've indicated all through the race, several teams in contention as they now run into the number 2 turn as the race now is coming close to the halfway mark down the far sidelines. Someone breaking away, it appears to be the Acacia team.
They're going out for an exchange. Their man's out there waiting in that 4th turn.
Here are the official standings after 85 laps as we watch the teams go by. The Betas were at number 1. Cutters were in number 2. There are the Acacias making the exchange. The Acacias were riding 3 after 85 laps. The ATOs were 4, and the Delta Tau Delta team was number 5 after 85 laps. As they move now, the leader is now on the 94th lap. As you see it on the far side of the track as they head down the back straightaway back there, and it continues to be a strong performance over there by the Cutter team. Of course, the exchanges, Chris, are so important as we're watching some of these. One of the teams earlier, the Avari team, which was very strong contention, here they are making an exchange.
Yeah, it's just the rider getting off the bike just didn't get off soon enough. They were both attached to the bike at the same time, and you can see the result well on the screen. One important thing you can notice, though, is that their team was able to chase and catch the field without losing a lap. It took a lot of effort, but the weaker teams don't even have a chance to do that. So they're still in contention for the race.
Of course, we've had a little bit of strategy going on in this race so far. A few laps back, about 10 laps back, the Beta team, number 2 here that you see leading, broke away as if they were going to try to lap the field, and they did pick up a considerable amount of advantage over the rest of the pack. They were leading by probably 100 yards or so and attempted to pull away, but they were having very little success at it as they were forced into an exchange a little bit later. It's awfully tough to lap the pack these days, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to get a lap on the field, especially by yourself. One team, especially on a windy day like today, I really don't think has a chance. You can see other teams at this point trying to get off in small groups off the front, 3, 4 strong riders. They possibly would have a chance to get a lap on the field, but one rider alone, I don't think so.
On a day like this, we've talked about the wind quite a bit. How much advantage is it to be trailing behind a rider right in front of you?
Well, it's got its pluses and minuses. You get one rider behind one other gets quite a draft. He's making about 70% the effort that the rider in front does. However, the riders back in the field are also riding in hazardous positions, and they risk being in one of those wrecks and losing a lap at that point. So there's give and take to it.
On Friday evening here on the IU campus, as a part of the world's greatest college weekend, the mini trike race, and here's Charlie Morgan to talk to the winners.
Max, we've got the winners of the Mini 500 here. Ladies, why don't you introduce yourselves? Let people know who you are.
Tara Conwell.
Sherry Peters.
Vicky Petrucci.
Judy Jones.
Carolyn Duff.
And I'm Tom Carrero.
Okay, what was the winning strategy? How'd you guys pull it out?
We just had a lot of practice and we've had a lot of experience and we just worked really well together. And our strategy was just mainly just being real safe on the first couple runs and then going all out in the last 2.
Things go pretty well as planned?
Very well.
Good. Thanks, ladies.
Officially, Chris, after 90 laps, the Cutters in the lead. The Chi-Phis had now worked into second place. The Phi Gams were third, the Acacias fourth, and the fifth team was Wright Jenkins. So those were the first 5 teams after 90 laps. The action now in the 129th lap of this year's Little 5 with the Cutters in the lead at the moment, followed closely by Sigma Nu and then a whole pack of others. In fact, there are about 10 teams now that are on the same lap, and the rest have now dropped back a bit farther. The Betas being one of those teams, along with the Cutters, as we gave to you. The Phi Psis are up there. Team number 14, Reed Curry, still in the top on the same lap. Also Avari, as is the Lambda Chi team, doing a good job this year. Number 8 team, the Phi Gams. The number 17 team, the ATOs, and the number 7 team, the AE Pis. As they go by once again, team number 9, the Sigma Nus, just taking the lead as they nudge across the start-finish line. A while back, we had our first really major accident as they came across the start-finish line. This was some laps back at 1:04. As you can see, they had just crossed the start-finish line, and there were several teams involved. The accident occurred at the middle of the pack, which left the front runners out in front. Here are the teams that were involved. Team Collins, Reed Curry 2, KDRs, the Delta Tau Delta, the Spokesman, Pi Kappa Alpha, Alpha Sigma Phi, Wright Dodds, and the Sigma Phi Epsilon. So all of those teams were involved, and it really spread the pack out at that point. As we pick up the live action once again, as you see the team number 2, is it, going by the Betas on the far side leading the pack just at the moment, with the Phi Psi's trailing just behind, and then breaking through. Appears to be an exchange coming up as the team moves out in front, coming up toward the start-finish line. Those are the Phi Delts, and they are on the far side ready to make an exchange, the reason that they have moved so far out. Shortly after that wreck a moment ago on the 104th lap, we had another one occur right in the middle of the main straightaway just in front of us here, as the Acacias got tangled with another, bouncing him to the inside. The Acacias kept their balance, but the other rider was bounced to the outside to the infield. Those happening about 2 laps apart. Now the standings at 125 laps, the official standings. Number 1 team was the Cutters at that point. Number 2, Chi Phi. The Phi Gams were in 3rd place, last year's defending champion. The Acacia were 4th, and the Alpha Epsilon Pi, the number 5 team. As we now move into lap 134, as they move down the back straightaway, and it is the Phi Delt team that continues to lead the pack out there, as the teams are starting to stretch out a little bit now. The Betas moving it out also. The Cutters, as are the Acacias, and now they head into that strong wind. Exchanges occurring on the far side as you see them coming right down at you. Chris, do the exchanges get tougher as you get tireder?
Yeah, it does, and the rider's trying to make the big effort to get that gap for his teammate. As you come in, your legs can barely hold you up. In fact, sometimes you can see the riders come in and just collapse in the pits. It's really hard to come off the bike running like that after trying to get that gap.
The action here at the Bill Armstrong Stadium at Indiana University has now reached 159 laps. As the pack goes by, the same teams continue to be the leading teams as this race is moving down to what appears to be a sprint. Now here, after 155 laps, here are the 5 top teams. Number 1, Alpha Epsilon Pi. Number 2, the Cutters. Number 3, Beta Theta Pi. Number 4, the Alpha Tau Omega team. And Avari is number 5. There are now 10 teams on the same lap, and only 2 seconds separate the 1st and 10th places, so you can see it is a real sprint that apparently is headed. And Chris Gutowski, who has ridden in this race 4 times, the teams with the good sprinters may yet determine who's going to win here today.
Yeah, I think at this point the teams are just trying to set their rotations up to get their sprinter on the bike at the right time there in the last few laps, and trying to get him as much rest as possible. And there are 3 or 4 teams in there of those first 10 that do have really good sprinters. The Acacia team, of course, has the winner of the sprint last year, Jeff Hillegas, and they're right up in front right now in 3rd position. Also, the Cutters have a fine sprinter, 2 fine sprinters, in Adam Giles and Randy Strong. And the Wright Jenkins house has Dave Knabb, who is a racer with much experience both in Little 5 and in the summer. So it looks to be quite a matchup here at the finish.
Well, as we're watching now, the Acacia team pulling out, but they're doing that for the purpose of getting an exchange. They have a considerable lead right now, which should give, if they make a good exchange, should give their next rider an opportunity to join the pack at a pretty good position. This is one of the few times that they've had this opportunity. Here comes the pack. Here come the Acacias. You see them getting back on their bike, and they're going to end up about in the middle of the pack as the Phi Delts go by first to lead the race at the moment. The Chi Phi is right in there also. The AE Pies are also in there, and of course we've mentioned the Cutters, and they're running very, very strong.
That was a good effort on the exchange by the Acacias. They have a lot of problem there in that last turn, like we noticed earlier, and their man has to slow down so much that that gap has to be very large.
And as they go by in the pack, here's Charlie Morgan in the infield.
We've grabbed one of the busiest people here. Jim Pulowski, you're a veteran of the Little 500. How many years have you been the official PA announcer?
Well, this is my 32nd year as the announcer. I saw the first race in '51. I was chairman of Rules and Regulations in '52. I was president of the Student Foundation in '53, and that's the first year I did the announcing. So it's 32nd year now.
You have an advantage here over the, say, a PA announcer at the Big 500. You can talk to the drivers. What do you try to tell the riders in the race?
Well, partly we relay instructions from the chief steward. If he sees anything going on out there, he sees a bicycle with something wrong, we call it to their attention. We also talk to the riders in case of an accident so we can tell them where the accident is, what they have to be careful of. We communicate also with the teams in the pits in case we have to call a team for something. And of course, when there's a penalty called, we also notify the team and they have to come in. Yes, we talk to the teams on the track and in the infield in the pits.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, back once again at the action as the pack once again comes out of turn 4 and heads down the main straightaway. As the team coming across is Wright Jenkins leading the pack, but as we've indicated, we're talking about only a couple of seconds between the 1st and 10th place teams. The average speed right now through 160 miles an hour is right at 23.55 miles per hour. That's a pretty good speed considering the very, very strong wind that we've had out here this afternoon, but they have done an exceptional job. We've had very few wrecks. We've had only one major wreck in which more than 3 bikes have gone down, so it's been a fairly clean race, a fairly safe race, and once again the pack comes out of the 4th turn as they come around to complete lap 166, and there they go by once again, this time the Fidelts just out to the top ahead of the Sigma News, but that lead changes on almost every lap.
Yeah, the teams are just jockeying back and forth at this point, trying to keep their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th men on the bike while that sprinter's over in the pit, you know, loosening up, resting, maybe getting something to eat, and you know, the teams are just trying to stay out of trouble and rest as much as they can. So there's not a lot of action right now.
Many of these teams have great traditions over the years. The teams that we're seeing here today, for the most part, have run well in all of the previous races. The Phi-Side team has the best rating of all. They're rated the #1 team. Last year they started 27th, finished 3rd, doing a good job today with 7 wins. The Delta Chi's, who didn't make the race this year, 7 wins. No team, however, has started back farther than 14th and won this race. So that puts a lot of pressure on the Acacia team, which starts 21 as they try to defend their championship today. We're now on lap 188. The Acacia team has moved out now to make an exchange, and this could well be their final exchange of the afternoon as we're only about 12 laps away now. We're assuming that this is Hillegos, who last year rode the championship lap, is about to take the exchange. He is now on the bike. He's going to be close to the head, but the exchange, Chris, was not that good, was it?
Well, it was all right, as well as they've done them all day, and their riders back into the middle of the field, no problem. So I think that's pretty successful for them. And they've got their main man on the bike, and he looks like he's ready to go.
Now the important thing is to take a look at the other front-running teams to see what they plan to do. On the far side, Wright Rollins now making an exchange over there, the #4 team. That appears to be the only ones at the moment in contention, at least, making the exchange. Phi-Si's now moving away. They were running #8 after 185 laps. They're breaking in front. They have the new silhouetted helmet that you see just in the lower right-hand corner of your picture, about to make their exchange. The Cutters now moving also with Avare as they come across the start-finish line.
Yeah, it looks like they're going out for their gap to put their final man on the bike.
Very definitely. You can see the Cutters there. That's team number 10 moving over to the side. Let's watch their exchange.
I would imagine that many of the contending teams at this point are going to be putting on their...
And they too meet about midway in the pack, dropping just slightly off the back now as they come back around, and apparently now all of the teams in contention are either making their moves to put their final rider on or have him already on the bikes. Across the start-finish line, the Betas now moving up. Let's see if they plan to make an exchange here.
You can see the pace pick up every lap as team after team sends a rider out to put that sprinter on, and that keeps the pace rolling, and it'll build and build into these last few laps.
Watching on the far side as some of these exchanges are occurring, and one bike gets away there and almost into the pack, almost causing some kind of a mix-up, but everyone straightens themselves out, and the pack continues to ride. We are now coming up, the leaders coming up on the end of lap 192.
And it looks like team number 13, Wright Jenkins, is making a move off the front right here. This looks like more than just an exchange at this point. They've got a gap of most of a turn.
They're swinging to the outside on the far side. It's not into your picture right now, but apparently they are making an exchange over there as the pack continues to stay pretty much the same.
And the Jenkins rider still has a gap on the field, and at the very least he'll get in right at front, set up perfectly. That was excellent. But it looks like he's going as hard as he can, trying to keep that gap open. This is the team to watch here for the next few laps.
Right now, Wright Jenkins just now crossing the start-finish line, and he has a lead of perhaps 25 yards or so over the rest of the pack, but they're starting to try to make a move, and he appears now to be dropping back to the pack, as you can see them catching him on the side over there as they move into the number 4 turn. We have now completed 193 laps. The leaders are on their 194th lap as they come down the back straightaway into the number 3 and around into number 4.
And here we see it. We see a couple of the best teams with their best sprinters out there right at the front doing everything they can to stay in contention here at the end.
The Cutters have taken the lead now on lap 195.
And it looks like he's going out for a gap, and they have a man on the track. They're going to do another exchange here.
So we are not done exchanging here. Another exciting finish of the 34th annual Little 500 bike race, just 5 laps away from completion now.
And that was the Cutters and the Averi team, another strong team exchanging over there on the backside. They're 2 of the top 10 or 11 teams that are still on the same lap, putting their sprinters in for this finish.
So now we'll have to take a look as they come down the main straightaway. It is team number 13, Wright Jenkins in front. Alpha Tau Omega, team number 17, is in second place, but we must remind you that about 10 teams are within 2 or 3 seconds of each other, so it apparently is going to be another sprint to the finish as the leaders now have completed 195 laps as they move around halfway around the 195th lap into lap ready to begin lap 196 as they move into the 4th corner. You can really see, as you indicated, Chris, the pace has really picked up here now as everyone is starting to move. And once again, this time, the Fidelts have moved out to the number 1 position as they cross the 10-second line, assuming they are on the same lap. And according to my records, they are in the same lap with the leaders. Number 13 team, Wright Jenkins, also in the pack, as are the defending champion Acacias. All of the teams that we've been talking about all afternoon, the Cutters, the ATOs, the Alpha Epsilon Pi. 195 laps officially on the board. The Cutters were leading at that point, but the thing that's important now is that we have now completed 196 laps, and we're coming to 197. The Fidelts across first, Wright Jenkins across second, ATOs across third.
And you can see the sprinters jockeying back and forth in the field with Hillegas and Adam Giles, the Cutter rider, and the Averi top rider, and the Jenkins rider who's in second place here. And it's all part of the drafting strategy here coming in the last few laps as to who will lead it out and who will try and come around.
Where do you want to position yourself here? I assume you don't want to get boxed in any manner on the inside, and yet you don't want to give up too much track on the outside.
Yeah, you want to be as far to the front as you can be and still not be in danger of losing a draft totally and having to work at the very end of the race.
Now it appears that Wright Jenkins and the Cutters are at it right now. Also, the ATOs are in there, and we are just at a lap 198 completed on 199 laps as they move around on the back straightaway. The moment it is Wright Jenkins, the white flag is ready to be thrown out.
And there's Jeff Hillegas moving up on the outside back there. He was the man that won the race last year, and the Cutter man's in second place behind the Wright Jenkins rider. That's probably Dave Knabb, their number 1 man.
Here's the white flag from Chappie Blackwell as Wright Jenkins goes across.
And here comes Hillegas.
Hillegas moving up on the outside. Look at him go. Jeff Hillegas, who last year won for the Acacia, has moved up. He moves down the back straightaway. Riding strong there, the number 2 team appear to be the Chi Phi.
And there's the Cutter team in 4th place picking it up, and the riders are coming around.
It's going to be another close one. Jeff Hillegas of the Acacia still trying to move it out.
He's taking it on the inside. It's the Cutter. It's Adam Giles. He's got it. It's there.
Adam Giles wins. The AE Pies are second. The Acacias finish third. As Jeff Hilligoss of Acacia last year was successful, this year he was not successful. Adam Giles of the Cutters caught him in the last 25 or 30 yards as the Cutters win the 34th annual Little 500.
What an incredible finish there. The Cutter rider came all the way through on the inside through the last turn and was boxed until the first three riders in front of him, led by Jeff Hilligoss, moved out. And he was lucky to get that space there, but boy, he sure came through.
Ready to move now into the third corners. We have a slow motion here of this exciting finish here. You see Jeff Hilligoss there riding just to the inside. And Chris, suppose you tell him what's happening right at that point.
Well,
Hilligoss is on the inside.
You see him slowing down a bit as he hit that headwind, and the Cutter rider was perfectly positioned to get that snap out of the last turn in that gap Hilligoss left on the inside. The other rider there on the outside also coming around Hilligoss, but Giles had the best draft all the way through that curve.
So what we're really seeing there was the same thing you see on stock cars so much, where they whip out of that fourth corner.
Pretty much the same thing. That headwind we talked about that would be so important strategically today was the final thing here in the sprint that made the difference.
We've got one of the winning Cutters here with us. Can you tell me what the game plan was all along? Was it just to stay in it and be competitive and then do that at the end?
Pretty much so, but we felt we had a really strong team, and it was our job to push the pace to wear everybody down. Our positive points were our strength, and for us to win, we had to make everybody else tired.
And do you think that the wind came into play dramatically, or did it balance itself out? You picked up speed and lost it?
Exactly. It was kind of a rubber band, you know. You'd pick it up over here and you'd slow it down over there. But it pretty much stayed balanced. There's a lot of people pulling through over there working really hard, so kept it even.
Did you see the Acacias coming over the shoulder at the end? How'd that make you feel in the last lap?
Pretty good. I was glad to see that the Acacias let it out. That way Adam sat back here right until the fourth turn, had the wind, you know, with him. Just blasted right by him. I couldn't really see it because of all the fans, but when I didn't see them cheer, I knew.
You knew it was your turn. Well, congratulations, a great win.
Thank you.
I want to say a special thanks to Chris Kukowski, who helped us this afternoon with our telecast of the 34th annual Little 500, and to Charlie Morgan. This is Max Skirvin from the Bill Armstrong Stadium, where the Cutters have won the 34th running of the Little 500.
The 1984 Little 500 was brought to you by Indiana National, pioneers in banking. Budweiser, proud sponsor of the U.S. Olympic team. For all you do, this Bud's for you.